Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faitheism Project podcast. This is episode 21, season 2.
Yes.
My name is Alan Katz. I have always been grateful to Hebrew School for making me the atheist I so very much am today.
And my name is Randy Lovejoy, and I am a pastor who has stepped outside of the church to help people to move inside of the faith. And it is good to have you back in California land here, Alan, after a visit with your mom.
2 weeks, I spent 2 weeks back east. My mom lives in a retirement community, a large community called Riderwood outside of Washington, D.C. in Silver Spring, Maryland. And she's declining, alas, as we all do. My sister.
How old is she?
She's 1936. So.
Oh, okay. All right. So 2022.
86 this year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's, my parents are both 86. My mom's turning 87 in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And my in-laws are both 85. So
you have all of them.
I know. When did your father pass away, and how old was he?
My dad passed away. God, it's been a lot of years. It's been 7 years. It's been a lot of years. I don't remember. I'm so bad with remembering.
That's all right. So was he in his 70s more or less? Then?
No, he was in his 80s. My dad.
In his 80s. Okay, he was older. All right. And then do you have in-laws that are still alive, or?
No. My Helle's father died quite a long time ago. Her mom died a couple years ago. She was in England in a retirement home, boy, and that was hard because it was, my mom lives in a lovely place. She lives in a nice apartment in a lovely building in a whole huge lovely community filled with people just like her. She has a fantastic aide named Beauty, who is from Zimbabwe and really is she's like my sister. Oh, she is my sister. Beauty is my sister from Zimbabwe. She is as much a daughter to my mom in these past couple of years as any of us have been. She really has. We could not do what Beauty is doing right now with my mom, just the daily care. I mean, I was just there for 2 weeks. And I was just there to be there. I was there really to be there for my mom, but also really I was there to spell Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
You
don't know her last name, do you? Beauty's last name?
Okay.
Okay, no, that's I know a Beauty Ndoro, and I thought, boy, that'd be really bizarre if that happened to. Anyway, that would be
stunning.
But that is the caregiver is huge. My mom is not in kind of the situation your mom is, from what I understand. We can talk about that a little bit more, but she's definitely needs a lot of help, and she has a helper named Brenda who is amazing, and who same sort of thing, it sounds like, as Beauty, because she does a lot of the everyday work. She'll take her on shopping when that's needed, and she even flew over here to be kind of the primary caregiver while mom visited, which actually made the visit work much better for everybody. So
probably made it possible.
Yeah, right. It made it possible. Yes.
Right.
Because she could get her, through the airports and all of that, and over here. So,
these are amazing. These are amazing people.
Yeah, they really are. They're if Beauty is at all like Brenda, there's just this ability to care and almost laugh off some of the foibles and funny things, and just continue to be there and provide help, in a way that, I mean, that's an incredible gifting, that these people have. Ooh. That's mind-blowing. So yeah, so she's a blessing to us. So yeah, I agree. That's good. So now tell me, I mean, so basically during the visit, you would come over partway through the day because your mom gets up later, and kind of just be there with her. Is that how that
normally I would have stayed at my mom's apartment. There's a spare room, but since my mom got she's now she's not in hospice, but she's receiving hospice level care. Because it's understood this is a one-way street. It's not like there's going to be any improvement. There just isn't. And at one point, Beauty used to put my mom to bed around 11 o'clock at night, and then she would leave and come back about 8 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got to the point, because of dementia, the entire circadian rhythms. What circadian rhythms? The entire rhythm of the day just gets tossed up into the air like pickup sticks. And suddenly my mom wasn't going to sleep until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and Beauty felt just she couldn't leave. And so we decided to, in essence, we pay her 20 hours a day, and she now lives there. And it would not be possible for my mom to continue to be as independent, and I use that word rather loosely, without Beauty. She would have to be, she could not stay in her apartment. We would have to do something else. It would be a very drastic move because she simply cannot.
And again, I think one of the things I've seen is that there are certain, children that are wired up with this kind of caregiving nature that, say, we've seen in Beauty and in Brenda.
Yeah.
Can handle the parents there. But if you've got a bunch of other responsibilities going on too, and somebody that needs intensive care on a regular basis, and you've got to run your life, and you're not necessarily wired up kind of in that direction, it can really strain the relationship itself between the parent and child. And so, and I think that was the other part of when my mom visited, is it's like she was here for X period of time, then we'd take her back to the hotel with Brenda, and then we knew Brenda would take care of things and get her ready for the next day with whatever we were going to do then. And then Cheryl and I could go back and be here for Sam and,
is
do
there
life,
a sibling,
right?
is there a sibling who lives nearby?
Yeah, my sister lives near my mom, about maybe half an hour away or so.
So she's the day-to-day responsible.
Yeah, again, Brenda, with my mom and Brenda at this point, they're the ones that it still works just with that. She's there, I think, 4 or 5 days, 5 days a week.
My younger sister Deborah lives in Silver Spring, and
okay,
that was part of the original. All the logic was why my parents moved into the place that they ultimately chose. One of the pluses was that it was 10 minutes away from where my sister lived. And she has become, when my dad was alive, and then when it was just my mom, increasingly Deb became the person responsible for all of the daily business and keeping track of an incredible amount of detail. I mean, Beauty does the day-to-day work of physically taking care of my mom, but all of the paperwork.
Yeah.
And there is so much paperwork, the admin and the chasing.
You have like a long-term care insurance kind of thing that you're invoicing or anything like that, or what's the paperwork?
Yeah. They're
okay. Yeah.
And they were very cleverly, they have a policy that is really paying dividends, as it were.
Yeah. And we, my mom has one too. And she's got a version. I don't know about your mother, but my mom has one that isn't even available anymore. They don't offer it anymore because people are living longer. Yeah. And the actuaries figured out they're not going to make money on this because they pay out on an unlimited. I mean, there is no limit to, there is to the hours, but there's no limit to the years that this could go on. And that was fine when people didn't live as long. But now, when Cheryl and I were starting to like, well, we want a long-term care insurance for us for whenever we need it. And there were only like 2 companies in the US that we could find that offered it at all. And they're both very limited. It's for X amount of time that this will be covered and then you're done. So, I think that's one of the things for folks when you're kind of caring for your parents and reflecting on your own end of life scenario, you better either have a long-term, well, you should probably have a long-term care policy and have extra money saved up for all the expenses, because it's expensive, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys, it's expensive, the care that's needed.
It is. There is, getting old is in America.
Yeah.
In America, we've made getting old a tragedy and a travesty.
Well, and you just have to save up for it, because like you even said with your, the difference with your mother-in-law, I think it was, and your mother, it's like your mom lives in a quality place, and there are a lot of places that are not quality.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can save money by sending your parents there, but it's horrible. It's like horrible warehousing of old people. But you want to be able to be in the best place you can afford as well. And so I think, it was interesting, because when I was planning for retirement stuff, at one point, there were calculations, and I'm like, oh, I'm not too far away. And then like the next year I looked at the calculator again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happened? And when I looked in, it's like they had adjusted all their calculators for end of life medical and care costs that they hadn't included in before. So suddenly it was like, no, now we're going to say you need a massive additional amount if you're really going to be, secure, and odds are that you'll live longer. So I don't know. That was one of the things I definitely want to get to talk to you about, the reflections on your own mortality as you're seeing your mom's situation. But at least one of them for me was, okay, I've got to get my act together in terms of what I'm going to do end of life for me and for Cheryl, not only for our sake, but also for the sake of our sons.
Oh, surely.
This is a really important thing to think all this through and figure out, what am I going to do? Am I going to have enough money to cover it? Can long-term care insurance, is that viable? And all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but I mean, so you're there with your mom.
Yeah.
She wakes up later, you said, right? So she maybe wakes
up.
Her
the breakfast routine, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Most days she wasn't out of bed heading into the living room today. She was going to, on those days when she could get into the living room, which was most days in the end.
Okay.
By 4 o'clock, around 4 o'clock is when the day started.
Oh, wow. And then when does it end for her? I mean, when did she actually go to bed?
They start the bedtime ritual about 11 to midnight, but it might be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Really, it depended.
Right. Sure.
Some nights I didn't get home till 1:30.
So, but that means that, you're visiting there. There's no point in going until afternoon, maybe even late afternoon.
Right. There was literally nothing. There was nothing for me to do, which worked out, because then I was fortunate. I was staying at my sister's house. Now, my sister normally is the responsible. She does a tremendous amount of work. She and her husband were taking a month off to drive a big circle that encompassed Colorado.
Wow.
And so they were doing, they're both retired teachers. And my sister.
That's really amazing that they're doing that. That's really, hats off to them.
Oh yeah, they wanted to do this a while ago, but then the pandemic kind of interfered.
Yeah.
My sister really, more and more, as my mom is going downhill, really, she needs to be spelled. She needs some time. She needed time.
Exactly. Needs a break from the care. Yeah.
So, then I could be there for 2 weeks in the middle, just so that, she didn't have to worry that there was someone there to, just
pick up any slack that there would be.
Yeah. So, there's nothing I can do for my mom. There's literally nothing.
What did you do in your time together then? Was it just kind of saying, how's it going, Mom? Or did you play games or watch TV or watch a movie?
It's my presence.
Okay.
And there's TV watching is pretty much, that's the activity. She's past the point where you can have a conversation with her. I think she understands pretty much everything. That seems to be, you can see that in her eyes, but she's got aphasia. Throw that into the mix. And so she might think a thought in her head, but what comes out of her mouth isn't necessarily what
yeah.
the thought was in her head.
Mm.
And that can be challenging.
So conversation is not always easy.
They're short.
Okay.
They're short and to the point.
Yeah.
But I try to. Yeah, I can't engage in conversation, but I can still talk about things in short clips, and I can be there, and I can be entertaining, and I can take her outside the box where she is. One of the things that we began to do during this trip, it was part of what we were intending to do. My mom has been using CBD oil, CBD tincture for various aches and pains, some pretty bad arthritis, and a wound to one heel that just will not ever heal.
Yeah.
An unhealed heel. And CBD is not doing it. You don't want to go into the opioids, of course. And so the decision was made, hey, let's see what we can do with THC. Now, she's not going to smoke it. It's going to have to be edibles or tincture. And so I brought supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting side note, traveling in America these days, with cannabis being legal in California and medically legal in Maryland and on the verge of becoming fully legal there, traveling with cannabis is a thing. And I have done it now repeatedly. We're gonna come back to my mom and THC. So just stick a pin in this. I'm gonna do we got a little side hustle here that I think you'll find interesting. All right. Now, I used to write for Weed Maps. They had a news division called Weed Maps News, but I wrote a 30,000 word piece about the history of cannabis prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Blunt Truths, and 13 parts. I highly recommend to go Google Blunt Truths, Weed Maps, and learning not only the whole history, but just learning about what's happening as it becomes legalized, as the prohibitions come off of it. And one of the interesting things that I learned is that with the mental block, the group that the organization that the security at the airport, at TSA, thank you.
Yeah.
TSA THC. I started. All right. So if you have cannabis in your possession in the state of California, even if you're at the airport, it's legal. Just because I'm in a TSA line, it is still legal. It's not illegal for me to possess it, really, theoretically, up until the moment I walk onto the airplane and they close the door. That's when a whole other set of rules theoretically take over, and then the federal government has really jurisdiction of the law inside the airplane. But up until that moment, until I cross the threshold of the plane,
law until you get into the plane.
Yeah. So legally, even if the TSA finds my stash, they're not looking for it because they're not going to do anything. They can't do anything. There's no law being broken.
Right.
So you can go through a TSA line with really all the cannabis you want, so long as you don't have a bail over your shoulder, and that probably a little over the top. So what a lot of people have figured out is that, yes, you get on the airplane, you're not going to do anything with it on the airplane. When you land on the other side, well, nobody knows anything. So you're going to walk off the airplane with everything. And that's just how it is. And so it is simply a truth that an awful lot of cannabis is moving from parts of this country to other parts. On the first day that cannabis was legalized in Nevada, an interesting thing happened in Las Vegas. Virtually every edible available in Las Vegas sold out. And it wasn't people from Las Vegas or Nevadans buying it. It was everybody else who was about to go to the airport and get on an airplane with their gummy worms. Hey, Can you tell the difference between a THC gummy and a non-THC
yeah,
gummy?
right.
Of course you can. And the same
Right.
goes for a brownie, the chips, all the other foodstuffs. Hey, the cola these days, really, okay. If you took it out of the can, the can that says, cannabis cola, you'd never know.
Yeah.
And so the edibles really revolutionized everything because now they can go everywhere. Hey,
Yeah.
dirty
Yeah.
little secret. The last couple of times I've traveled to Europe, of course, I'm not going to take anything there, but edibles.
Yeah.
And so it really has revolutionized a whole way of all right. So one of the things that I was traveling with as I made my cross country trip was edibles and tincture for my mom, because now we were going to bring her into the THC tent, so long as she could tolerate it. That's always going to be the first question. Can someone tolerate? And it's edibles, and edibles are a very different experience from smoked THC. Very, very different. All right, so I had these two tinctures called Wow, 1,000 milligrams in a single small bottle, strawberry flavored. I had another one that was cola flavored, and so I was traveling with that plus my regular stash of daytime and nighttime stuff across country. All right, so I get to my mom's, and we are now going to introduce THC into her life. And the first question is, of course, can she tolerate it? And a couple of drops into her water that she takes her pills with, and she tolerated it fine. In fact, what we discovered is that the more THC we got, the more present she became. And suddenly you could have more of an actual conversation with her. You could God, one day we were watching an HBO movie about the trial of the Chicago 7.
Okay.
Starring Sacha Baron Cohen stars as Abby Hoffman. And the English actor Mark Rylance plays he plays a lawyer named William Kunstler, who defended the Chicago 7. Now, we knew Bill Kunstler. My family knew Bill Kunstler. We knew Bill Kunstler's sister, Mary Horn. And Mary, God, we knew Mary. They were very dear, close family friends. And Bill Kunstler, whenever he was visiting Mary and her husband, Manny Horn, occasionally, yes, there would be a collective get together. And I don't really remember much about Bill Kunstler because I was a little kid. He meant nothing to me. But my parents, as Bill Kunstler became more famous, my parents were always fond of pointing out that he skinny dipped in our swimming pool. So we're watching the trial of the Chicago 7. And of course, it's not Bill Kunstler on the screen. It's an actor playing Bill Kunstler. But I said to my mom, hey, Mom, this actor, Mark Rylance, he's playing Bill Kunstler. Do you remember Bill Kunstler? All right. Now, this was a deep, deep reach into the past. And, for a little moment, there was the fog, and then you can see the light go on. And she couldn't really articulate much, but I was able to fill in some of the blanks. When I got to the skinny dipping, she nodded. She nodded. She knew exactly what I was talking about. And so did the THC help? Yeah, I think it because that's what THC does. It just, it kind of makes you think more, because it's just, it's causing more of the synaptic, the synapse is really just to be open versus closed. And so you will process more information with THC in your brain. And so really with the brain processes reversed, this is helping a little bit for short periods of time. And even Beauty noted that and Beauty was skeptical of the THC. I think she saw after a couple of days that, my mom was more animated. She was more present. When I got there, and I was there for 2 weeks, one of the first thoughts I had as I walked into her room and I saw her lying in bed was, she ain't gonna last this 2 weeks. And when I left, I thought this holding pattern could go on for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Because there's not, I mean, is this just general aging, or is there something in particular that has her in hospice type?
Dementia, aphasia.
Okay. Okay.
And so, tremendous difficulty swallowing.
Okay.
And so, that could be the problem at some point, but although heart is strong, other vital signs are good.
Well, and tell me one story that's one of your kind of favorite stories about your mom earlier in life or something. Is there one that comes to mind?
Boy, it's funny. My mom was, so on the one hand, I think I was a puzzlement to my parents because, my dad was a surgeon and his dad was a dermatologist, so I think it was anticipated that I'd follow in those footsteps into a medical career. Unfortunately, my math skills are a null set. Anything with one answer.
That's good.
Sorry, dudes, no can do. So as it was quite clear that math was going to derail any kind of medical school, and writing was really, that was the thing I did, writing and acting. I think my on the one hand, they were a little fearful, but they were, hey, if that's where life was going to take me, then that's where it was going to take me. And so my parents were always incredibly supportive of the technical term is mishigas. It's a Yiddish word that means nonsense. Okay. But it is the technical term. It's mishigas. It's funny. I almost can't nail down one particular memory of my mom, because there are so many. We traveled when I was a kid, and funny. I remember the first trip we made. There was a family that we traveled with, the Druskins, who my parents at the end of the day had a falling out with, and so their name is I think he was to spit 3 times, but
yeah,
nice people, but there was a falling out. So we traveled with the Druskins, and the first time that the parents took the 4 kids, we went on a trip to Spain and Portugal. And the first time, we landed and we got to the hotel in Madrid. It was early in the afternoon. The rooms weren't going to be ready for a couple of hours, so we were just going to hang. And so we were all hungry, and so my parents thought, hey, we should go down to the little bodega there and get some food, some jambon, some mantequilla, some bread. Couldn't think of the word for Spanish. Great, Alan. And I know I was kind of shy about it, and my mom said, "Come on, you can do this. I mean, look at the stuff that you do when you walk on stage. This is just, just practice this, just do it." And it worked remarkably well. I'm sure we made a teensy weensy bit of sense, these 4 little Americans trying to buy something, but of course the shopkeepers were fantastic. They bent over backwards. The experience was as the first travel experience to a foreign place, and the first lesson was other people are wonderful.
Yeah.
They're
that's great.
Amazingly wonderful, and why would you not want to explore every last nook and cranny of the world?
Yeah, and it's great that that she had the presence of mind to let you stretch and do that, and encourage you to do that rather than just getting it done. Yeah.
To their infinite credit, they allowed me to fail, and I did not disappoint them on that. There was a certain point where I seemed to be very good at failing.
So what was her, I mean, would you say what was her personality like? Like, was she, loud and boisterous? Was she quiet? Was she behind the scenes?
Yeah, she was. my parents had a very equal marriage. No one, they didn't say out loud, to me and my two sisters, your path, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter whether you're boys or girls. No one said that. That was just a fact of life. It was understood. My dad was a phenomenal surgeon, an incredible human being, nothing awful with money. I inherited that from him. I could not give a fig about money. Honestly, it is, I know I need it, but it does not motivate me to do anything. And that was how my dad was about money. He was in the doctoring business for the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom was a great compliment to him, because she wasn't greedy, but she at least she understood how to keep a checkbook.
Right.
And so she was, she took care of the finances and she ran the business side of our household. And she was an incredibly competent person. There was nothing that my mom couldn't do. Now, interesting thing about my mom. My mom's mom, my grandmother, Natalie, was a pharmacist. She was a pharmacist in the early part of the 20th century in Philadelphia.
Wow.
Now, you would think that a professional woman would understand how empowering having an education and having a profession would be to a woman. But my grandmother, strangely, was a rather selfish person. And her attitude toward my mother and my aunt, her sister, was that the only degrees they'd be looking for at college would be an MRS degree. A terribly cynical thing to think about your own daughters. And so she wouldn't send them to college. My mom, I think, went to study to be an X-ray tech. And one day at Philadelphia General, she bumped into an intern named Gerald Katz. That was my dad. And my mom, well, okay. She was not encouraged to have a career, and so she didn't think that way. And I guess I should be grateful, because I probably wouldn't be here. But that said, I don't think there's anything my mom could not do if she put her mind to it. She is, she an incredibly capable, competent person, good tennis player.
Mm-hmm. So does that, given where she is now, how does that make you feel in terms of who she was and who she is now?
Now, here's where I found myself. We've now come to the crux of the matter. As I occasionally, when I would get over to my mom's, sometimes, well, if she wasn't in the living room, if she was still in bed, or even if she was in the living room and just staring at the TV, sometimes just kind of vacantly, I found myself staring at a future version of me. And even as she lay in bed sometimes on the days when it just wasn't happening, and the gears were not going to turn, the engine wasn't turning over. And she was just stay in bed, and she'd just kind of sit there, like a lump of flesh. And I'd stare at her, and there's that kind of face that they take on. The mouth hangs open, and there's something death mask like it. And I see where her face looks a bit like mine, and the next thing you know, suddenly I'm sitting not just in her shoes, but in that bed. I'm inside her flesh. That's me. There's a moment in Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey when the astronaut Dave, the astronaut that Keir Delay plays, and he gets to that planet where the monolith has sent him, and he's in the room. He's in this room that's been set out for him, and in essence he watches himself age, and suddenly He's staring at an old man in the bed. He is staring at himself. Suddenly, as an old man, he's in a heartbeat. He's lived out all his time. And I found myself having that very experience.
And what thoughts came to mind as you had that experience, or feeling, or emotion, thoughts, whatever?
The first thought went something like this.
That's good.
But louder and more panicked.
Yes.
There's a line of poetry I've quoted on this podcast from Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress. But at my back, I always hear Time's winged chariot hurrying near. And suddenly you went, oh my God. And this is the preview that they're playing inside the chariot.
Yeah.
It's for some reason, plays occur to me. Shakespeare's The 7 Ages of Man popped into my head. The character Jaques talks about the 7 ages of man, and the last is second childhood, which is absolutely where we all land. And that's what my mom can't even lift food to her own mouth anymore. And Beauty has to do that. She's really utterly helpless. To transport my mom from her bed to the living room, because really we can't get her onto a chair anymore. She can't do the transfer. It's just too hard. So we have what's called a Hoyer lift. It's a little crane and it's got webbing in essence that you can slide underneath my mom. It goes underneath her bottom up to her shoulders, and then it tilts back a little bit, and we crane her up out of bed, and then we wheel the crane through, to the bedroom, through the hallway, into the living room, and then we crane her down onto her chair. It's on the one hand, it's a little absurd. It's kind of crazy. If you pull the camera back every now and then, go, look at this, check this out, man. This is what we do now, because we live so far beyond really what our bodies are actually able to pull off, that we train ourselves from bed to chair, and then back from chair to bed at the end of the day to go back to bed. That said, that Hoyer crane is really cool. We talked about how expensive it is to be old. We got that crane at a reduced price because of the insurance. We own that crane. And one of the things I said to my sister just before I left, before I got on the plane, was at the end of the day, if I get no other inheritance, I want that damn crane. You all can have everything else. I don't care.
That's right.
Just give me that crane.
That's right. Oh man.
So now, so that, I was living at my sister's house, which was great. That I was able to go back and have space to me, which was essential. Man, if I'd been living on the couch in my mom's apartment, I don't know that I could have really done this and stayed entirely mentally healthy. It's hard, the energy, and it's a dynamic community filled with people who, they die on a regular basis, but when they walk in the door, they're all still very dynamic and filled with life, and there's a lot of stuff happening there. Be that as it may. And I would put in, I'd get up at 6 a.m. and I'd work till about 3 and then get in the car and head to my mom's. But I put in a full work day. And then I'd get to my mom's. In essence, then I was going to from 4 until midnight. That was the next work day to be at my mom's. And I finished my work day, and I'm used to working 12, 13-hour days here in Los Angeles. I'm used to production. That is a 12, 13-hour day. So 12, 13 hours is nothing. So after an 8-hour day, I'd get in the car, still plenty of vim and vigor, and I'd arrive at my mom's place, and I'd get out of the car, and almost as soon as my feet touched the asphalt at that place, the energy just drained right out of me. It was the most remarkable, horrifying experience it, and it happened every single day.
I don't know how related this is, but it reminds me of my mother-in-law, who is an occupational therapist. And, a lot of times when I'd go into a hospital, I'd lose energy. It'd be like, oh gosh, this is such a tough place. I hope I never end up here. Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But when I was talking to her about it, she said, I actually am energized by hospitals because
Yeah.
I know I can make a difference in people's lives. And again, I would guess that Beauty comes there and is energized because of how she's wired up.
Oh gosh, yes. There's stuff to
and
do, and that is the
right.
remarkable thing about Beauty. She,
Yeah.
and that is why this 2 weeks now. I've known this for a fact as long as I've known Beauty, known what she did for my mom, but it's now more than ever to maintain not just the energy but the positive outlook. Yes, hey, it is one's obligation to
Yeah.
when you're in the room to be that positive, but
Yeah.
to be there full time and do it,
Right.
it requires gears I'm not sure I have.
Yeah, exactly. That's and I am constantly in awe of people that have that can do that. And it's such an important skill, especially just given the way the way we live our lives and the length of life that we have and all that. People that have those skills are just invaluable, kind of unsung heroes, I think, in a lot of ways of our society.
It is, we live in a world where we are constantly facing our mortality.
Mm-hmm.
That we are mortal is constantly being, our noses is always being rubbed in it. This 2 weeks was a reminder on a daily basis, in addition to the other reminders on a daily basis that our time here is finite.
Yeah, it is a limited amount of time,
and it's not just to, it is to fill every day with purpose. Was my biggest takeaway, was the hurry you thought you were in before to get everything done. Pick up your step a little bit. Pick up the pace. You do not take anything for granted.
Right.
One has to live. You can't, put the nose to the grindstone to the nose ends up flying off your face because the grindstone eats it. But even in every relationship, and I think, in a way, that's another thing that it drives home to me. The importance of relationships and taking care of your relationships and really nurturing them. In this case, like I said, there was nothing I could do for my mom other than be there. And that was, in whatever way, just be there. And the same thing applied just where Beauty was concerned. It was whatever she needed, I just had to be there for her. And the same thing with my sister. That was, the point of this, the 2 weeks really was about those relationships. Now, hopefully some of this will pay forward. And when my time on the crane comes, and they're hauling me from one place to another in that way, there will at least be a little sympathy to go with the mocking.
Yeah, I think that's, agreed. That's, it's interesting just having parents that are in that stage. You want to be there, the relationship matters, you want to care for them. At the same time as you're doing that, it's, I think, inherent in the whole process is really starting to reflect on your own mortality and say, okay, what really matters and what do I need to be doing? And am I focused on the things that matter, because this is a limited thing,
have you ever thought about your own personal legacy?
Yeah, well, and that's, when I was working a little more on this book, one time a phrase just popped into my head that's stuck with me, which is that I want to live a life worth dying for. That when I'm on that hospice bed, I want it to not be, oh, it's so a shame that Randy's here because there's so much he didn't do, but instead it would be more like, hey, this is the end of a life well lived, and so what that means exactly, I don't know, but yeah, legacy is yeah, to me, that's, I would really like it to end with a legacy that I can say, well, I did what I can do with the time that I had, and like you said, in the relationships that matter, with the relationships that really matter, that I've invested in them, and those folks are doing well and ready to go and have the resources they need, or whatever character they need, whatever it is.
Have you been good to the people you need to be good to?
Yeah.
And the answer needs to be yes. And then the next question is, and have you been good to everyone else too?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
really,
right.
that ultimately is okay. All right. So that's top priority, because you got to live with those people in your face. All right. And everybody else?
Yeah. And I think almost like since Queen Elizabeth is having her Jubilee, whatever you think of her or whatever, I mean, the fact that she's the longest living, monarch in the UK, and that I'm sure she has all sorts of weaknesses. Nevertheless, the legacy she's going to leave is, in terms of her own life and her own actions, I think most of the British will say she was exceptional, in the role that she played, through good grief, how much history has she lived through? I mean, it's like major historical events, and all of this. So, and it just makes me think like, okay, yeah, what would happen, in my 90, how old is she? I don't even know how old she is, 90 something.
90 something,
but,
yeah.
If I had a 90th Jubilee or whatever celebration, what's going to matter then? And so what do I work toward?
That might be an episode.
Yeah.
What would be, okay, project forward, what will be your greatest hits?
Right. Yeah. I think so. What are, what are the things that we're working on now and putting time and energy into and investing ourselves in that will actually matter when we're 90 or something? When
we're old and gray.
Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be a great one. I think that would be very interesting conversation. So, and it sounds like this trip is a good prep for that conversation.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah. Well, I am glad that you have taken the time to do that, and but I am also glad that you're back in the same town I'm in. So
it was great to be back in Los Angeles. Yeah, I always miss Los Angeles when I'm not here. It's strange. It's the only, I grew up, no, I didn't grow up in Silver Spring where my mom lives. I grew up in Baltimore, but I don't miss Baltimore for a millisecond.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I never thought for 2 seconds that I belonged there. It was where I grew up, but I never thought of it as my home.
Yeah.
And then after college, I lived in New York for a bunch of years. And as much as I aspired to be a New Yorker, I never was a New Yorker. I certainly never claimed any of their teams as their sports teams as mine. I would never be a Yankees fan. Talk about selling out. That'd be a horrible thing to do. Or a Mets fan, screw them. Or the New York Giants, screw them. Anyway, and if you don't
once you got here, you kind of found your place.
Suddenly, yeah, I became a Lakers fan and then a Dodgers fan. But I've told the story, I think, how I sold out.
Yeah.
And sold my soul to Los Angeles and realized it was a terrible reflection on me, but okay, I was home.
I hear
But
you.
yeah, anyway, you know, seeing a, a preview of the end of one's journey, certainly one takes stock of where one is at the present. And yes, the next steps suddenly become even more important than I thought they were.
Yeah, that's right.
So takeaways. And on that bombshell.
You know, I think this whole conversation's not about big bombshells anyway. It's
No.
and yet
it is
a different kind of conversation, you know.
You know, life, you know, coming face to face with one's mortality is the biggest bombshell that will ever land in your lap. It really,
it's almost, it's so big that it's hard to, I mean, there's a lot of times where you just want to be quiet with it. You don't necessarily have some really great statement to make. It's more like, oh yeah, that's true, isn't it?
Hey, the biggest bombshell of all, you ain't talking your way out of this one, son.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
And with that, thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good to have you guys again, and you know, and again, I urge you to have these kinds of conversations as well with people that you're talking with, because you know, these kind of very basic life discussions are part of what builds the relationship, even if you have differing opinions on other issues.
Oh,
this is the stuff that we all participate in together. And
really, this is the as nuts and bolts as life gets, and this is where we all really suddenly you put down everything and suddenly you realize you're part of a much larger tribe than you thought.
Yeah, especially when it comes to death. I mean, it's everybody. So,
we will all be members of that club.
That's right. We are all a part of that tribe, and we're all going to have to deal with it sooner or later. So, and not on our time schedule either.
Not necessarily. And on that cheery note.
That's right. Have a great day.
See you next time.
Because it might be your last, so have a really good day.
Indeed. So make the most of it.
That's right.